In this video, you're gonna build a Ask About Penguins application using Streamlit, and we're using Python. And so without further ado, let's dive in. So this application will be built in Snowflake, and you could feel free to go ahead, do a 30 days free trial, which is free, completely free. You'll be able to get up and running using the data that we're going to upload into the platform, and then we're going to build the application right inside the platform. And so you could think of this as kind of like a online code editor. And yeah, let's begin. So this penguins data set is actually the Palmer penguins, which was originally provided on as a R package called Palmer penguins. And it's kind of like the equivalent of the iris data set, but then instead of flowers, you're analyzing penguins. And so they have the 3 different types of penguin, the chinstrap, gentoo, and also the Adelie. And this was originally compiled from the research group of Alison Horst and also Kristen Gorman. And they actually collected the penguins data set themselves, and they're generously providing this for the data science community for analysis. And so in other prior tutorials on my own YouTube channel, Data Professor, what I've done was take that data set and then clean the data set. So for your convenience, we're using the clean data set provided here. Click on the raw, and then we have the CSV dataset here. And so I'm also going to provide this in the same repository that I'll also make available the application that you see here. And so do check it out in the video description. And so let me show you how you could go ahead and import the dataset into the environment here. So we're starting from scratch. So after you sign up for an account there, what you could do is, let's say you start from home, and then you want to upload your data, right? You have your data set as a CSV data here. And so we're going to import it. You click create. You click on add data. And then you're going to load in your data set from your own computer. So there are several ways where you could import your data, like AWS S3 or Google Cloud Storage, or from a URL. So here we're going to load data into a table. And so the supported format is CSV file. Here we go. So I've already created the Chanin and demo data, which is where I like to keep all of my demo data, where I kind of play with data. I normally will keep it there. And then I normally would go ahead and click on data or public. Let's go ahead and say public. And then you could type in the name of the table. So you see that I already have it here. So the next one would be you select next, and then it will proceed with actually creating the table for you. Because I already have it, I won't do it. All right, and so the data is here. If we click on data and then we go to the Chanin and demo data, I think it's in public tables. And then here we have the penguins data set here. All right, and so our data set will be provided here. And now that we have the data into the platform, we're going to click on projects, and then I'll click on Streamlit because we're going to create a Streamlit app. And the app that we've had created is here, Asked About Penguins. But before doing that, let me show you how it looks like if you want to create a Streamlit app for the first time. So you click on the Create Streamlit app here. And then you'll give it a name, but you could also just leave it as default, and it'll provide like the timestamp for you. And then you could go back and edit the name afterward. And so application, just select the Chanin and demo data, and I'll just leave it as public. And then app warehouse, I just leave it as the extra small warehouse. And click on create. And then you'll see that it provides you with an example app, which is about 44 lines of code. And it gives you kind of like some of the things that you could do in a Streamlit application, like the familiar, import Streamlit as ST, and then you could write out the name of the app, st.title. You could use st.write to write out text. And the cool thing here is that you could essentially create a session, and then you could import the data set that we had just uploaded into your app here. And then you could, use it to generate sliders as an input widgets. And so, yeah, this is how it looks like. And you'll be able to have a Streamlit app in, literally seconds or a minute. Okay, so I'll go ahead and take a look at the app of the penguins that we just created. So this is our prior creation. I'll go ahead and click on edit. And then the code is actually 80 lines of code. So remember how I mentioned about using session here to initiate, and then you'll be able to use SQL statements here. So it's essentially here. This SQL statement, select all from Chanin demo data, public penguins, and then it will take this SQL statement. It will use it as the input query for performing the SQL query, and then it will then convert it into a pandas data frame. And then you could display it just by returning df, which we'll do later here on line 69, df. And that gives us this table. So literally you could do session and then provide the SQL statement and then provide, the conversion to pandas. And then you'll have a pandas data frame, in a few moments. You don't have to use st.connection when you're developing outside the Snowflake platform. So all of it could be done right inside the platform. The data is secured. There's everything that you'll need. Essentially the code editor is right here on the web, and then you could experiment, explore the data, and build the app. So here we're just returning df. We get this table, and then you're creating the submit button, and then the associated logic, which will allow us to click on submit, and then it will take the user provided question. Here we're using st select box, which is right here, and then it will perform the LLM model generation in order to find the answer of which penguin has the longest bill length. And then based on this LLM model data analysis, it will provide you the answer. And so note that we're performing, as mentioned, the data analysis using LLM, and we're not providing any additional context aside from just kind of like, here's our question, and here's the data. And then the LLM model will go ahead and figure it out. It will perform the data analysis for you. It could also help you to, prepare, format, wrangle the data sets for you on your behalf. And you could also ask it to prepare the data in a format that will allow you to do subsequent data analysis, model building, or also data visualization. And if this works on one data set, you could easily plug it in with another data. So you could just go ahead and modify the SQL query here to retrieve another data set of your choice. And then your app will work. And then, yeah, you could share it internally within the organization. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Which penguin has the longest bill length? Where do the heaviest penguins live? How about that one? Let's go ahead and find out, where do heavy penguins live? Click on submit. And then the thought process is happening. And so here, all of this in only 80 lines of code. So while we're waiting for the answer, let's have a look at the code, right? So first few lines was to import the necessary Python packages. We're importing the session state variable, not session state, but session variable. And then we're defining the SQL statement here to select all of the data from the Penguins data sets. And then we're converting it to the pandas data frame, assigning it to the df variable. Then we'll define, 3 additional helper functions to perform the LM generation. And then we're going to extract the link tag in order to take out the contents within the tag. And then we're going to display that within the container. And then outside the container, we're going to also display the generated answer later on. I'll mention that in a short moment. We also created a function here called escape SQL string, which will format the SQL string for us as we use it for the model generation response. And then starting from line 40 to 41, we're going to create the title, Ask About Penguins, which is right here. And we're using a cute emoji of the penguins. And then we're defining the 3 questions that could get you started. And then you could create all of your pre-filled question as well. So this also helps in the long term when you're performing your analysis. Some of the frequently asked questions that you typically would do to any data set, regardless of what it is. And then that's kind of like the initial exploratory data analysis phase. So you could keep a history of that here. Or you could replace it with a st.text input, which will allow the user to specify the actual questions that they would like to ask. But here we're putting the user query list here into the select box variable. The user queries will be here, which will provide the collection of questions to select from. And then the magic happens during the prompting phase here. So essentially, we're creating a system prompt that tells it that it is a helpful assistant that will use the provided data to answer natural language question. And the natural language question here are the ones provided in the drop-down select box. And then it will use the data which is provided here in the pandas data frame. And so here in the next part of the prompt, we're defining that the user has a question in the question variable because we're using the f string, and that please use the data that is provided right here in df.toMarkdown, where we converted the data frame into a text markdown format. And then we also provided the parameters that we would like to use, which is a temperature of 0.7 and a maps token of 1,000. And then we'll also provide the guardrails parameter to be true. So this also helps to maintain the integrity of the generated response. And so we're creating this if condition logic in order to perform the underlying model response generation, where upon clicking on the submit button, it will display a thinking, and then it will perform the model response generation. And this will encompass two phases. The first phase will be the thinking phase, and then the second phase will be taking what it has thought about and then summarizing it into the generated answer. So you'll see here that it has the thought phase right here, and it's articulating the answer. Based on what the user is asking, it will try to perform the data analysis for you. It starts with, figuring out how many species are there and what they are. And then it also, try to figure out like how many variables are provided in the data set. And then it performs this thought process, iteratively by starting with, it needs to find the heaviest penguins. And in order to do that, it needs to analyze the body mass, which is in grams. And so it's scanning through the data and it's figuring out which of the penguins were the heaviest by analyzing the penguin species by species. And then finally, it provides, like a recap of what it has done. And its answer is the, Bisco Island for the Gen 2 penguins. And in its final answer, it is saying that the heaviest penguins in the provided data are the Gen 2 penguins, which live on the Bisco Island. And it has the weight of 6,300 grams. And it is significantly higher than Adelie and Chinstrap at approximately 2/3 of that, at 4,700 and 4,800 grams. And these are the maximum weights of the other penguins. So yeah, it's pretty amusing to see the thought process of the LM model. And all of this is only in 80 lines of code. And you could, add more complex workflow to this. You could tell it by prompting so that the model will be able to, prepare the data set for you for subsequent data analysis or subsequent data visualization. So yeah, this is a very powerful framework for you to try out. And yeah, let me know in the comments section how helpful this is. And yeah, definitely feel free to replace any of the elements mentioned here with, with what works for you. So instead of the all-in-one, platform here, you could use your own local computer, VS Code editor. You could plug in any other LM models. You could use Olama, or you could use OpenAI or Anthropic via the API tokens that you have. And yeah, import your CSV data sets and then read it in to your app. And then you could replicate this entire workflow. So all of this, as I've already shown you, was conveniently performed all in one place, which is on the Snowflake platform. So go ahead to signup.snowflake.com. You could try it out for free. You get 400 worth of free usage, and yeah, no strings attached. Try it out. It's online. Think of it as kind of like an online code editor. And yeah, all of that, packaged into a single place for you to try out. And so yeah, let me know in the comment section what other video ideas that you'd like me to create. And so until next time, happy streamliting.